Hello and what is up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. I am doing another episode of Gaudy Takes. Really just kind of working on the formula here, trying to figure out what works. I thought that what we could explore today would be the totality of the gaming industry. 2026 so far has had a slew of headlines that, in my honest opinion, have negatively impacted the gaming industry. And right now, it sort of seems like the entire thing is a dumpster fire. So I thought that we could look at a few of these things together, kind of see what has led up to this point, the various popular factors that have been discussed, some of the things that, the future of the industry sort of hinges in the balance of, and really just kind of look forward to what sort of trends, the silver lining, if any, and if there's some sort of pattern or something like that, once we zoom out and look at everything together. So like I said, in 2026, there's been no shortage, I guess, of negative headlines. You have Sony, for example. You have Xbox. You have Stop Killing Games. You have Fortnite and Epic Games. You have Rockstar. You have Ubisoft and other studios. You have flops, delays, shutdowns, cancellations, legislation that's going through, blowback from the last 5 to 6 years. Even Valve themselves is sort of getting raked over the coals right now. But it is a lot to keep up with, and so I've sort of devised a chart that I think will kind of help us zoom out and look at everything in its totality. Because it is July, so the year is halfway over, and so far it's trending like 2027 is going to be worse, 2028 is going to be worse, and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna pull that up and we'll take a look at that together. So here we have 2026 so far, and I've kind of boiled it down into a few different things. The major things being obviously like the games that have come out, within the last fiscal year. We have no more loot boxes is a headline I wasn't expecting to read, but obviously, just like with everything, there's a caveat. We have the layoffs. We have Sony getting rid of digital discs. Stop Killing Games and what's going on with that. The Xbox layoffs. That's actually just happened as of today. We have the Fortnite and Epic Games layoffs. We have the Rockstar drama of everything that comes with that, including the no disc version. Ubisoft. We have lawsuits with Valve. We're going to talk about Valve's hardware, and I think the elephant in the room, and honestly probably the biggest sign of things to come, is the inclusion of AI assets in various video games, the failure to disclose them, and other shady business practices by these companies that have sort of led to not only the increased layoff of devs, but also the complacency of the industry as a whole, and what I consider a slow decline in overall quality, especially coming from like AAA studios and things like that. So first, I kind of want to take a look at the games. And from there, I've sort of broken it down into four different categories, sorry. We have delays. So a few notable games that have a lot of hype, that have gotten delayed. Marvel 1943, The Rise of Hydra. GTA 6 has been delayed probably 3 times now, twice, something along those lines. Lords of the Fallen 2 has been pushed into next year. Fable has been delayed as well. Most of these delays kind of have to do with Rockstar. Once they set their November release date, all of the other games sort of shuffled out of its way. And, basically all it's sort of translated to is longer wait times for gamers for lower quality. Fable is a really big one that I'm sort of watching because we have studios like Playground Games who made Forza. They're really good at making racing games. What the fuck do they know about high fantasy? Next, we're gonna just touch on a few of the flops here. So South of Midnight, that was sort of lauded by a lot of the the Gamergate the evil side of the Gamergate discussion, talking about how it was super inclusive and there was representation and blah, 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 blah. There was tons of marketing for it, especially last year. Tons of investor money going into it. And, well, it flopped. I think there's maybe 30 people playing it right now, if that. We have Keeper. Essentially, it was like you're playing Death Stranding, but it's worse. And instead of being a person, you're a lighthouse. Not really for anybody. I don't know who this game was made for. Just from the trailers and stuff, I didn't even get the demo, which is really, really saying something because that's free. And I run through demos like I change underwear. So you have Hellblade 2. The first one was a risk. I think that it was a creative direction that the studio took. I think it should have been a one and done sort of thing. They tried to like turn it into their modern day God of War or something, and it just did not work. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to play like a female with schizophrenia in, the primeval era or the primordial era when everyone was using like sticks and shit. Nobody wants to play that. The Outer Worlds 2, I played the first one. I think the reason that all the hype sort of died for that was it was way too short. They charged, I think it was $40 when the first one came out, and I beat it in like 3 days. And, when you go back and you consider like the replayability of things like Fallout New Vegas, clearly they didn't hit the mark. With Outer Worlds 2, they promised more, they promised bigger, they promised better, and really all they did was sort of expand the same, like, dull gameplay loop, the shallow lore, and the finicky mechanics that, in my opinion, just didn't really work as, like, a cohesive thing in order to even warrant a sequel, let alone putting all this money and all this shit onto it. And then you have Marathon. Marathon was like the Hail Mary play by Sony and Bungie. And I guess they thought that if they took every ounce of goodwill that Bungie had garnered from things like Halo and Destiny, and Sony took all of its goodwill that it garnered from things like Ghost of Tsushima and God of War, and it seemed to have single-handedly taken all of those properties and like $2 billion and sacrificed it in order to make this amalgamation that is Marathon, where the design language isn't cohesive. I ended up playing the server slam, and I could barely fucking understand the difference between the loot. Menus seemed like overly complex for no reason. It seemed like they added sub-menus within sub-menus and sub-menus within that. The characters weren't notable. Nobody really resonated with any of them. And really, the instructions for the game were so unclear that you had one guy that was playing it for like a month now that has never extracted because he didn't know that that's what you were supposed to do. It really goes to show how the mighty have fallen, because this is the same company, in name at least, that delivered Halo 1, 2, 3, Halo Reach, Destiny 1, Destiny 2, things that are really, really highly regarded by their fan base, and they just seem to have gone the way of things like EA and Activision, in the sense that they really just don't care about their audience anymore. It's more about getting things across the goalpost in order to hit milestones or collect on investor promises or push the fiscal quarter a little bit above the marker. And all in all, it's just kind of shown that it seems like all of the game companies that were sort of running things, 10 years ago, they have also slowly, just like, movie companies, AAA studios, slowly just like falling out of touch with what people want. Even beloved studios like Obsidian are at risk right now because of their failure to deliver on quality and expectation. You have like industry disasters that have gotten shut down. High Guard, which was, you know, previewed at the I believe it was the Summer Games Fest or the Video Game Awards or something to that degree. Like the highest echelon of like marketing and exposure that you can get, and it didn't last a month. It had such a low player base because they are trying to dictate what the trends are. They're you know, basically saying like, if we can invest and go all in on the marketing, maybe we can foster some sort of false equivalence of hype. And clearly it did not work. It did not translate into players. It did not translate into purchases. And, you know, it really sucks to say that I think they shot themselves in the foot agreeing to, you know, reserve that place for them at the end of the Game Awards. But, I mean, they're the ones that said yes. They were the ones that were confident enough to agree to it. And, you know, it just, in the end, could have been bad management, could have been lazy devs, probably a combination of the two. And it wasn't good. And then, you know, just to kind of hit on Ubisoft a little bit, you know, they've been canceling games. They've been releasing flops. We had Star Wars Outlaws. We had Assassin's Creed Shadows. You know, they're really sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to remaster Assassin's Creed 4 because that was like the last, you know, widely regarded Assassin's Creed installment that came out. And apparently there are instances where they have taken the new Ubisoft features like you know, bullet sponge enemies and damage sponges and applied them to things like boars within the game, which I think is a god-awful design choice and is going to basically pad the game time artificially to make it seem like you're getting more value for your money, when in all actuality it's the same shallow, go here, check off this box, remove this marker from your map, and there's 3,000 markers. And I honestly just I think they're going to take a good thing and make it worse, because that seems to be the trend of the game industry as a whole. We look at things like you know, the GTA trilogy, for example, getting a remaster that, you know, ended up being way worse. And there's a slew of other examples that you can use to kind of justify this being a trend, but those are just a couple of the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But Ubisoft, again, they're canceling Assassin's Creed Singularity. They canceled the Prince of Persia game. So we're not getting another one of those for probably another decade or so. And all in all, I mean, it's just not looking good. Really, the only thing that people have to look forward to at the end of this year is GTA. And GTA is coming with its own, you know, slew of things that we'll get into here shortly. So talking about loot boxes, like loot boxes were a really big problem back in the day, especially with EA. I think Star Wars Battlefront 2 is the one that comes to mind the most, or Battlefront 1. Recently, there was a legal decision in Brazil where they fined major companies, around 58 million total, for predatory loot boxes. New York sued Valve, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Italy probed Activision, and essentially what they found is, you know, their claim is that the loot box mechanics and the gambling mechanics are harmful for children, so we need to be able to ID verify everybody so that we know that, you know, every game needs to know the age of its users so they can know whether or not they can advertise to them or market, you know, certain mechanics and stuff. And really, it just seems like a backdoor in order to bring about digital ID. A lot of the, like, New World Order, you know, United Nations, NATO, the WHO, all that shit, they all want this like global digital ID thing, and video games will just be simply another avenue to get people to acquiesce. So, you know, loot boxes go away, but they get to know exactly who you are on the other end. I don't think that's a good thing. I'd rather have the choice of whether or not I want to buy loot boxes than being required to give my ID. Especially to companies like EA and Activision. Like, I mean, Sony's been hacked. They've been hacked. It's not going to be good. Next, we move on to the layoffs. So all sorts of companies are doing layoffs. Like I said, Sony and Bungie are doing layoffs. Xbox is doing layoffs. Fortnite, Rockstar did a few layoffs. Ubisoft is closing studios. And it's not looking good. It's not looking good. I mean, there are a few things that have sort of played a factor into this. One is, during COVID, during lockdowns and stuff, there was a massive expansion of, tech industry, and especially like the gaming industry. Even like streaming got super saturated. And essentially what happened was they created a bunch of milestones and markers and metrics to try to hit these new trends with the idea that everyone would be home for years to come. Clearly that wasn't the case. That lasted, anywhere from like a year and a half to who you ask. And the problem is that, you have to find a roundabout way to justify removing these people. And, with the issue that we have with like DEI and, things like BlackRock and Vanguard, sort of systemically funding policies and companies that champion policies that sort of hire more based on identity and personality more so than like skill set or capability. So what we've gotten is a slow decline in the overall quality that I think can be proportionally intersecting with the amount of DEI hires that we have had since then. Because at the end of the day, now you are no longer making, performance or skill set or technique or craft your priority. It is what you look like. And people can look, all sorts of types of ways, and they're still shitty people. They're still lazy. They still cut corners. They cheat, they lie, they do all sorts of things. And so when you're not using metrics that sort of determine who those people are and look at those behaviors as problematic, you end up getting a very bloated employee sector. And so now with that comes, the inevitable sort of eroding of those to only keep who is necessary. The people with the skill, the people with the craft, the people with the technique, the people with the experience, the ones that can create, the ones that when they were hired brought in things to benefit the company, things that they could add to the company. Where a lot of these people that are getting laid off are detractors. So they were hired into the company and complained about the way the company was. They complained about the way the market was. They detracted away from the idea that skill is what generated value. And when you take things like that into consideration with the increase in AI, the overall economy with things like tariffs, increasing memory prices, administrative bloat across the board, it's really no wonder that you have companies like Sony, Microsoft, Epic Games, Rockstar, Ubisoft, EA, Activision, all just laying off employees en masse because they essentially overextended themselves over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think especially with the injecting of AI into like the workflows and work streams, that they are starting to realize that there is a massive redundancy in probably the bureaucratic processes, the management teams, most of the administration, HR and non-business impacting departments like that. They don't generate value. They are a cost hamper on the company. And at the end of the day, it just sort of allows psychologists to be in charge of like psychologists and PR and marketing people and politicians to be in charge of the gaming industry when 99% of those markets never touch a game in their life. Next, we have Sony getting rid of digital discs. So Sony announced that physical disc production for PlayStation games ends in 2028, potentially making the PS6 fully digital only. And this follows the planned closure of the PS3 and PS Vita stores in 2027. So not only are they closing digital storefronts, they're also saying that eventually, starting, in 2028, the only way to, consume PlayStation products will be to buy them from PlayStation on their store directly, or some sort of third-party partner or reseller for like digital codes. There is no more GameStop. There is no more letting your buddy borrow a game. If you bought films digitally on the PS3 and the Vita, re-downloading them after 2027 could become impossible. And you may need to use a PS4, a PS5, possibly the PC. They've had a few incidents like this in the past, like temporary delistings of games, like PT comes to mind with that. The fact that they can like ban your account and you lose all of your purchases, even for games and stuff that you didn't violate any terms of service. And server issues, they've had outages 3 or 4 different times, I think, over the last year and a half, where you just are not able to connect to them at all. And so the things that you purchased are just not available. And that, along with like the loss of the licensures for all of those movies and stuff on the PlayStation market, I mean, it's basically setting up a slippery slope to where you do not own anything that you purchase. It can be revoked at any time for any reason, remotely, and there's no workaround. There's no physical accessible way to use it offline or without, somebody's approval. So access becomes a huge issue. And, sort of timing this with the physical disc phase out from things like Rockstar and GTA, Xbox tried this back in the day with the Xbox One and the DRM, which Sony even had the gall to try to poke fun at them back then. And, it seems like, we're getting pushed in all directions towards this inevitable, like, digital future where, there will no longer be a way to consume things without somebody knowing, somebody being able to approve it, revoke it, change it, deny it, restrict it in some form or capacity. And, just to kind of piggyback off of the Sony getting rid of digital discs, like they're getting clowned about this. They have made their first post since announcing that, and it's just a bunch of people memeing on them, talking shit about how they can't get rid of discs and they're not going to buy a PS6 or, they're done with PlayStation. And, that also plays into the whole marathon thing and Bungie. So Bungie, obviously is continuing its downward spiral. Marathon drastically underperformed. They've all but, canceled Destiny 2, announcing that they're slowly sort of sunsetting that. They laid off around 300 people. And, that's just Bungie alone. That's not counting all of the other studios and all of the other devs and individual positions where, Sony has laid them off since then. And then we look at the Stop Killing Games initiative. So there was actually legislation that was sponsored by Stop Killing Games called the Protect Our Games Act. And essentially this bill aimed to classify certain game shutdown practices as unfair or deceptive trade practices under consumer law protections. And, this is where things like The Crew come to mind, where they were essentially saying like, hey, you can't play the game offline, but we're shutting down the servers. And sort of looking at whether or not there's like a fiduciary responsibility to consumers in order to sort of keep that going even when it's not financially viable. In my opinion, I think that, it's very easy for a game to sort of set up dedicated servers. They have done it in the past. There are, you can search dedicated server in your Steam library right now and pull up swaths of games that probably include some sort of dedicated server. I think all the way back to like Unreal and how they had dedicated servers and And you know, it seemed like that slowly sort of went away. And I would love for the option to come back, because that's like the number one argument that they have, is that the hosting costs and hosting it in general for these services is just not conducive to their profit, their bottom line, and that they don't see a need to have to incur any more costs for a game that is essentially like kind of dead. But in my opinion, like, if you're going to sell a product and you have the means and the ability to keep it going, and you artificially shut that off, that is on you. I mean, you're the one that, you know, sort of promised people this game, and you've fundamentally constructed it from the ground up to have to require online connectivity. And so your entire, you know, business model should be, how do we also make sure that this game is playable 20 years from now? And that has slowly sort of gone away, especially with help from like the Entertainment Software Association. They sort of lobbied against this bill on behalf of publishers like EA, Ubisoft, who we spoke about, Take-Two, who is the parent company for like 2K games, and Rockstar. During the hearings, apparently a lobbyist from the ESA famously called private community servers illegal black markets of piracy. And I'm not really sure where they get the idea for that. You know, I don't know how purchasing a copy of Minecraft and running a dedicated server where you can like mod and do your own things is considered piracy. You still have to purchase the game typically in some form or fashion, and they just sort of got clowned on for that. Nobody understands why, but of course, Congress being Congress and being the worst fucking thing it could be, they decided to strike it down. And so now the bill for Stop Killing Games, the spokesperson has said that they're going to sort of, you know, retract a little bit, re-examine things, and try a new strategy moving forward in the future, using what they've learned in this process to try to come up with a better way of handling things that could increase the likelihood of success for the movement. So next we have the Xbox layoffs. So the single largest event, like the layoff event, happened with Microsoft today. They cut 4,800 company-wide jobs, with about 3,200 from Xbox, which apparently equates to about 20% of the entire Xbox division. 1,600 of those were immediate today, like you are no longer allowed in the office. With the rest of them sort of being scheduled out through the fiscal year of 2027. There were 4 total studios that were divested. You have Compulsion Games, you have Double Fine. Those are both becoming independent studios now and being spun off. And then Ninja Theory and Undead Labs are getting sold to new owners. And currently Arcane, which was responsible for like Dishonored, and I believe they were in charge of the Blade video game that was going to be coming out, they are possibly getting the axe as well. Xbox CEO Asha Sharma called it a necessary reset for low margins and to refocus on big franchises. I'm gonna be honest, I don't like her. I don't trust her. She comes from the AI division of Microsoft, and just in my opinion, when we look at the trend of how there has been, you know, an exchanging of leadership for somebody that maybe isn't necessarily grounded in Western ideology to run a Western gaming company. The fact that she is AI first, I really just feel like it is a giant bait and switch. I think they had Phil Spencer intentionally mismanage the company and fall on the sword in order to prop this lady up artificially. They changed the logo. They announced the price decrease to Game Pass. I think all of that was just to zhuzh people and get them to trust her. And now, that we are sort of recentering everything. I think she is going to hyper accelerate the enshittification of Xbox as a whole. I think that Project Helix is going to be digital only. Right now, that is just a high expectation. And currently, Game Pass, which used to be like one of the best deals in gaming. You could play all the best games. It was like $15 a month. They ended up doubling the price to $30. Now it's down to like $22, so it's still up by about 50% of what it was originally. And they expected to have 77 million subscribers after doubling the price. They are retarded. They are stupid. It is an idiot thing to think. I think this is going to be sort of a way for them to make Game Pass even shittier in the future, if they even continue it at all. The only reason I have confidence that Game Pass will be a thing moving forward is because it lines up with their model of you will owe nothing, which is what Game Pass is. It's essentially Netflix for video games. So, they have a couple of charts here. So it looks like cloud first, you have the PC first, and then you have console and multi-device. Obviously being a massive chunk of that. It's grown exponentially over time as we've gone. We're about right here right now, and they're projecting that it's going to be like double that, and I don't see it. I don't see it. You need something for people to buy into the ecosystem, and you don't have any fucking games. You don't have any cool features. You don't have anything that's going to make me want an Xbox. The fact that I'm locked to your marketplace, the fact that I can't mod anything, the fact that I need to always be online, the fact that DRM is coming. I'm not a huge fan of the direction that Xbox is headed. I think that, if you would have said 10 years ago that Xbox would be fumbling the bag this fucking hard, I wouldn't have believed you for a second. But here we are. Everything kind of sucks with Xbox right now, and people are loving this Asha Sharma lady. People are loving this Asha Sharma lady, and I think she's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Next, we have the Fortnite Epic Games. So earlier this year, they laid off around 1,000 employees. This was back in March. They're sort of blaming the fact that Fortnite is starting to decline in popularity, microtransactions, battle pass sales, and shit. In my opinion, almost all of this can be exclusively blamed on the fact that they just continue to focus on collabs instead of new game modes. They rely very, very heavily on their community to create fresh content outside of skins, and because of that, there's no way to sort of capitalize on monetizing any of these things. And I think people are just sort of getting to the point where they don't want to pay for cosmetics. I don't want to pay $20 in order to be able to play as Peter Griffin in my favorite first-person shooter. I don't want 15 different cartoon characters all on the battlefield if it means that I'm also having to pay extra or deal with further monetization, locking things behind paywall, locking things behind battle passes and microtransactions. And so in my opinion, Fortnite, they've been riding high, doing the least and reaping the most. So it's about time that trend has started to come down. They have been on top since 2017. Kind of ready for things to settle down now, and for something else to kind of come in and take its place, which is probably going to be GTA. Rockstar. So this one's been kind of controversial. A lot of people are upset about the paywall content on day one. I'm going to be honest. I think that, GTA and Rockstar, they're no strangers to like locking things behind paywalls. You look at like the GTA Online stuff that's come out. I look at like the GTA 4 expansions. You had things like the Ballad of Gay Tony. You had the Lost and the Damned. Both of those were $10 extra. So in order to unlock everything for that, you had to pay $20 extra. And you're getting $80 for a base game versus $60, but it's still $20 to unlock everything. So I don't think it's a huge deal. I think the way that they sort of implemented it, where where there's going to be certain sections of the map that you just cannot access. Those need to be like unseen, I think, in the base game if you're going to have them in the premium game. Otherwise, it is a little, I think, manipulative, having people like drive by a shop that they can't go into even though they can physically see it in the game. And I don't like it. I've heard rumors that they are going to go digital only, that there is no disc version, which falls right in line with all of the other practices, with Sony, with, you know, Microsoft, I think, the way that they're going. And then, you know, throughout this entire development of GTA 6, Rockstar has faced union accusations of crunch, gender pay gaps, manipulative bonuses, hitting certain metrics for development and then like getting let go right before getting the payouts. Earlier firings of 30 plus devs sparked union busting claims. You guys may remember that when there were rumors that, you know, there were people that were trying to get a union started and those people got let go, and it was allegedly due to leaks. And, you know, there was this entire investigation. And rumors are still swirling right now about GTA being digital only. I don't think they've said for sure one way or the other, no, we're not going to have discs, or yes, we're absolutely going to have discs. So really, that's just something that we'll have to look at in the future. I don't think it's economically feasible for them to do it. You know, as a company, you're saving so much money by not doing a disc. But I also think that you have to look at the unforeseen cost of consumer goodwill and the fact that you are sort of screwing some people over and making the game unavailable for some people. And all in all, I think that that is a sort of a red flag and sign of things to come. We have things like Ubisoft and other like smaller studios that are getting cut. So Ubisoft had multiple rounds of layoffs so far. About 100 people in Belgrade, 93 in San Francisco, 65 in Winnipeg due to a studio closure, 40 in Toronto, about 105 people at a subsidiary called Red Storm. And that's just Ubisoft. Then we also have smaller studios like Iron Galaxy, Metacore, Keywords SF, Intrepid, Strikers, Bluepoint, which was part of the Sony closures. And all in all, just in 2026, we've had about 22 to 23 entire gaming studios shut down completely. And really, I mean, we're seeing that from every single avenue of the gaming sector. And really, I think it's all the consolidation and sort of course correcting from the mistakes that were made under the previous management and during things like the COVID pandemic. Next, we have Valve, which, you know, Valve would be the last company I would expect to be on this list. But for some reason, Gabe has decided to fuck around. And they're doing some things that I don't think are good. I don't think it's good. So we're going to talk about their hardware first. The Steam Machine, $1,000. You should have waited. Don't even release the product. Wait until the market costs come down, or take it as a loss leader, which is something that I'm super confused about. They're saying that this is the price point that they came up with according to all of their memory and business practices and things like that. Every console has been a loss leader in order to make up the loss of market share or lack of market share. And so the fact that you are pricing this at $1,000 when it doesn't even meet the performance of the consoles is kind of insane. I know that a large selling point is the small form factor, but that's not enough of a selling point, I think, for enough people to warrant this cost. And that's sort of like the biggest issue, in that, you know, I would have expected at least like an entry-level model, maybe a mid-range model, and then a top-of-the-line deluxe model, the top-of-the-line deluxe being the $1,000 plus. You get one model, you get one option as far as like the specs that go into it, and then two options for storage, and that's it. They're the exact same thing. Storage is different, but other than that, same thing. They claimed it could get 4K. It cannot get 4K 60 FPS without also having on, you know, like their FSR or DLSS, some sort of like, you know, generative frame duping, or something like that. And this is on the heels of them releasing the Steam controller, which was $100. I don't know why it's $100, and they had to put in these little things like being able to control it with a keyboard, or, you know, the sound effects like dropping it, making the Wilhelm scream. All those things could have been taken out. Little less engineering, make it a $60, $70 controller. Probably would have been able to get a lot of people involved with that, especially as like consoles are starting to become more like gaming PCs, and you need things like controlling the cursor and having that touchpad. People are already very familiar with that via the PS5. And then, you know, they also discontinued their Steam Deck LCD version, which, you know, in my opinion was like an incredibly good deal. Good for kids. You don't have to worry about this expensive OLED getting broken. You know, I think it was, what, $400 for the Steam Deck. It was great. I mean, it was a great deal. It was super upgradable, everything, and now there's just the OLED version. And I almost wonder if, you know, when they announce doing a revamp, if they're going to make it more expensive, it's going to be even more engineered. It's going to, you know, have even more custom hardware that you need. Thinking to the Steam machine, where, you know, you have the GPU and the CPU on a single die. Or at least like a single board, and like you can't easily replace that. That is a custom proprietary part, and is not conducive to like third-party repairs and third-party replacements, and that just is, it screams something that Apple would do to me, and so out of character for Valve. And I just sort of wonder if this is maybe a sign of things to come for them, whether that is like by force and they're being threatened, or if, you know, it's just it's the will of the market, the way that they sort of dictate it. And, you know, in my opinion, a lot of these things are sort of screaming like, you know, Apple from 10 years ago, even Apple today. And it's just, it's not good. It's not good. That is in combination with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. So we brought up a couple of these earlier. Valve is getting the shit suit out of them. Not only against the Rothschilds, but you have the UK class action lawsuit where they're getting sued for about $900 million. The claims in this is, you know, that Steam forces high 30% commissions that get passed on to the consumers. Valve abuses its dominant position on Steam, estimated 70 to 85% PC game market share, and Steam locks users into buying add-ons, DLC, and microtransactions through Steam, even if they bought the base game elsewhere. In my opinion, I think Steam should probably lose on two of the fronts. One is the high 30% commission. That is insane. It is the exact same thing that Google and Apple do, and I think it is anti-consumer, and it does create this sort of window for Valve to be able to manipulate their marketing, their sales, and things like that. I also think that they need to lose the it locks a user into buying add-ons. I think that if you buy a game on Steam, you should be able to buy the DLC from Epic and play the Epic DLC with the Steam game. I think that, you know, if you end up, you know, downloading it and buying it directly from like the retailer, and then you want to get the DLC, you should be able to buy the DLC on Steam and apply it to your game. Like, it should just work that way, and it doesn't. It doesn't. Anything you buy on Steam, you have to buy the DLC on Steam. You have to buy the microtransactions on Steam. It's the same with Epic. It's the same with Xbox. It's the same with Sony. And it really, really sucks that it's this way. You know, you have things like third-party resellers and stuff, but I think that really we need to be able to apply any purchase to any ecosystem if, you know, the funds are getting directed back to the company that made the game. Where I think that they are sort of misconstrued is where Valve abuses its dominant position on Steam. The reason that Valve is in a dominant position on Steam is because it's good. It's not because it makes you unable to use, you know, Epic Games. It doesn't have an exclusive, like an exclusivity contract with Microsoft, or, you know, honestly, it is a direct competitor with Microsoft, who you would think would have a higher PC game market share. But because they are so anti-consumer and Valve has such a good track record, it's like Valve is getting in trouble for being so good, and you can't do that. You can't punish a company for doing right by its consumers and being able to effectively dictate that goodwill through your own good business practices. Next, you have the Dutch claim, which is about 255 million. So it's kind of alleging a lot of the same things as the UK case. Says that Valve restricts competition through high commissions, forced use of Steam Wallet for microtransactions, and region locking, preventing cheaper keys from other countries. With these two cases, there's sort of a win-lose. So if Valve wins, obviously it's just going to reinforce Steam's current model, their current business practices, but likely appeals and continued scrutiny. They'd keep trying to, find different ways to sue them and appeal the case and things like that. Now, if Valve loses, massive damages payout, not going to go to any of the consumers or anything like that. It's going to go to, countries and companies and governments and lawyers. It's going to force changes to Steam's policies, such as lower commission cut, which honestly I think would be fine. That would result in cheaper games, or at least it should. More flexible pricing for publishers, so being able to allow indie game developers to price their games lower because they don't have to compensate for the fact that Valve is taking 30% off the top. And it would also set a precedent that would allow other cases, not only in Europe, but the United States, the UK, Russia, Turkey, everywhere, basically. It would become food for the vultures. Next, you have the U.S. lawsuits. So not only is it like the United States, but also the New York AG is suing them as well for their loot box / gambling stuff. That one, I think Valve has done a lot of things to sort of, set themselves up for success in that. The way that they changed like CS2 loot boxes and Dota and Team Fortress and things like that. So the U.S. lawsuit, Steam operates an illegal monopoly. Insane. I don't know how they could say that. There's no way that it is a monopoly, because there's nothing that Steam does to shut out other people. It is other people's incompetence and bad business practices that leads to Steam having such a high market share. That is something you should punish the other companies for by just allowing the free market to operate as is intended, instead of publishing the one good example we have of a good business practice that allows them to maintain such a successful share of the market. That Valve uses 30% cut and alleged price parity enforcement to stifle competition from lower fee stores. I agree. I think that they should get a smaller cut for that, and the price should overall be reduced for the consumer, and maybe even like higher margins for the developers. They have said that they don't do anything like this in order to like pressure publishers, but internal emails that were revealed in discovery during this lawsuit between Valve, Ubisoft, Warner Brothers says that Valve does basically use its market share to pressure these publishers not to discount games in other places, so on other markets and stuff. And I mean, if that is something that they're actually doing, they should be forced to stop that, because that would then make the top point, Steam operates an illegal monopoly, true. So they should stop doing that if that's something that they do. Gabe claims that there's nothing like that exists, but that's just as a public company policy. That doesn't necessarily deny that those behaviors are maybe encouraged unofficially. And it harms both developers with lower revenue and consumers with higher prices. All of these I think are true, minus the illegal monopoly. And honestly, I think that they should allow the other markets to fail. We shouldn't be subsidizing the failures of other companies and game studios. And then the New York AG lawsuit is largely about loot boxes and gambling. So claiming that Valve promotes illegal gambling through loot box mechanics in Counter-Strike 2, Team Fortress 2, and Dota 2, that skins and items have real-world monetary value. They do not. And can be traded or sold, making the system akin to a slot machine. So you can't control what people will find value in. Pokemon is making a huge comeback. Are we going to consider that those have real world monetary value and can be traded and sold? Because when you open Pokemon trading card packs, it's essentially like a slot machine, and those are especially harmful to minors. And that's where we get scalping and artificial price inflation and things like that. So if they're gonna say that this is the case, then they need to look at every single child toy in history that had some sort of mystery mechanic or gambling mechanic, some sort of change mechanic, and then retroactively also charge every company that's ever done that ever in existence and find all of them liable and fine them accordingly. I don't think that's going to happen, but what would happen is fines. It would force changes to the loot box systems, possibly even like complete renewal in New York, and possible broader US regulatory ripple effects. This could end up setting precedent for them to go after EA, Activision, every, sort of Game Pass, every battle pass, everything like that. And it could also influence other states or federal action on game monetization as a whole, which honestly, I'm not super against. I think that game monetization has become insane. I think that if you purchase a game, you should be able to get everything out of that game and not have the lack of things that are in the game waved in front of your face 24/7 as a way to sort of guilt you into throwing what little money you have to subsidize this company and their bullshit business practices. And last but not least, and I think this is going to be the biggest issue that we're going to have with games moving forward, and that is AI, the use of AI, generative AI, AI assets, AI placeholders, deception about AI, companies using AI and claiming not to, companies that, don't use AI in conducive ways, and people that are just kind of lowering the bar across the board. So we have 11-bit Studios. They made a game called The Alters. They had to apologize for not disclosing that AI-generated text prompts shipped in the final version of the game. Before we would have like very obvious placeholders, like gibberish or numbers or something to that degree. Like I think back to like the super high contrast like grid images that people would use, and you would know that, hey, I need to create something that goes here. Now, if everything's AI, it's like you're going to lose track of what was and wasn't AI. You need something that is definitive, easy to catch, hard to forget, that sticks out. I'll be honest, I don't buy the whole ignorance, missed it, it was a mistake. I think all of these are very, very heavily discussed, strategized, and conscious decisions being made, and they are just hoping not to get caught. And when they do get caught, they apologize, fix it afterwards, and then no harm, no foul. They don't have to deal with, deceptive marketing. They don't have to deal with false advertising. They don't have to deal with the fact that, they essentially lied to consumers. Call of Duty is another one. Like, they had all the Studio Ghibli player cards and things like that. AI generated images. Activision has actually issued statements defending AI as a tool to support teams. But the backlash, obviously, look, in my opinion, it's like this: if you have to rely on AI in order for your company or your game to be successful, then you shouldn't have to. Like, you don't deserve it. I don't think you deserve it. In the same way that, if you're too big to fail, you deserve to fail. We shouldn't be having to pay the cost for you, being shitty. And that seems to be the case, is that all the costs are just being passed on to consumers with a lower quality experience, higher prices, and just a shifting company direction that seems to just be anti-consumer all in all. You have Clair Obscur 33, a highly regarded game that won tons of awards. They used AI for some of their production assets. So they won the Indie Game Awards, and they got stripped of Game of the Year after it was revealed that the game violated their no generative AI in production rule. Huge debates, obviously, about whether limited AI use should disqualify a game. Steam tightened disclosures, disclosure rules, partly because of cases like this. They've even like started flagging games that do use AI. Tim Sweeney even called them out about it. Tim Sweeney can suck a bag of dicks, because I want to know whether or not AI was used in my game. I don't want to just be playing something that can be sloppified the fuck out by a computer. I want something that requires passion and skill and craft and had human thought and a human hand in making it, that had a reason to make it. AI has no reason to make anything. There's no incentive, there's no passion, there's no creativity or imagination. It is a complete misuse of computing power to subsidize a lack of creativity and skill. Crazy Taxi is another one. The first new mainline Crazy Taxi since 2002 had an AI disclosure on its Steam page. Players have review bombed it. I'm going to assume the whole game's AI. I'm not buying it. No thank you. Kingdom Hearts, the reveal trailer showed obvious AI artifacts like melting walls. Donald Duck had the wrong number of fingers. And even things like Stellar Blade Blood Rain getting called out for visible AI-generated Chinese characters and textures in the demos that they released on like stores and things like that. And so this has been 2026 so far, and we've covered a lot. We've been going for about an hour, and we covered various topics, from things like, you know, the games that have flopped, all the delays, GTA 6, Fable, South of Midnight, Marathon, The Outer Worlds, High Guard, as well as like the loot box stuff going on in Brazil, the layoffs that are happening en masse that seem to be affecting the entire game industry and all the companies as a whole. We talked about Sony getting in hot water for their removal of discs and going to digital only. We talked about the Stop Killing Games initiative, the Xbox layoffs. I said my piece about Asha Sharma. I still don't trust her. You shouldn't either. Fortnite and Epic. We talked about Rockstar and all the stuff that's coming with GTA 6, the Ubisoft cuts, the Valve hardware launches, and you know the lawsuits and stuff that could end up, you know, permanently changing the landscape of Valve and Steam as we know it. And then last but not least, the horrible trending increase of AI use in every single game by every single studio. They'll ask forgiveness before they ask permission. They'll make sure they sell you the game and then not, you know, be upfront about anything or take accountability until the refund windows are closed or that fiscal quarter is done. In my opinion, all in all, you zoom out on all of these things, and it just sort of creates a trend that shows that you should be playing older games. You should be, you know, looking at like PS2 games and old Nintendo games and old PC games, or even possibly even making your own game and avoiding all of these shady business practices, and, you know, being the example, being what people should strive to attain when talking about success in this industry. I think that, you know, it shows that there is a lot going on that's sort of hampering everything, and in my opinion, it is a sign of terrible things to come. You know, maybe if you disagree with me, you disagree with some of the things I've said in this video, please feel free to comment down below. Maybe drop some positivity, because to me, I mean, it looks like the entire gaming industry is on fire, and it's not going to be put out anytime soon. That's all I've got for today. This has been Gaudy Takes. We're just sort of talking about the entire gaming industry as a whole. Hopefully you stayed this long. If not, I appreciate, you know, your consideration. If you did stick around this long, consider liking the video, subscribing, sharing with your friend. And if you disagree with everything I said, let me know down in the video. If there's something I could have done differently, something I forgot, something I missed, feel free to comment down below. I'll have more of these out in the very near future, and we can talk about other things. And I will be doing a follow-up to this video, hopefully at the end of the year, so that we can see sort of how 2026 played out for the last half. That's going to do it. I'll be live later today. Thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.